987 THOM.
And you can drop into our live free chat room over at thomhartmann.com. It's fun. It's free. Some of the greatest minds in the world. Thom Hartmann here on the news. You need to know this. Less than 24 hours after voting to slash food stamp funding, House Republicans moved on to a full government shutdown. On Friday, the U.S. House of Representatives passed their version of a short-term spending resolution, which includes a measure to defund Obamacare. Before the vote, Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell called on Republicans to wake up from their radical ideological dream and oppose the legislation. Even Senate Republicans have warned their colleagues in the House against tying government funding to Obamacare. On Monday, Senator John McCain said, quote, Republicans ought to understand that if we shut down the government, Congress always gets blamed, rightly or wrongly. Congress gets blamed. We've seen the movie before. It's just some of them weren't around at the time. I was. End of quote. Of course, the House resolution will be dead on arrival in the Senate, but that didn't stop House Republicans from their 42nd attempt to kill the president's health care law. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid will strip the Obamacare provision out of the spending bill, and even President Obama said he would veto any proposal that defunds the health care law. The House bill is nothing more than a political game, which brings our nation closer to the brink of economic disaster. Apparently, House Republicans would rather continue their economic terrorism, even if it means that poor people, the elderly, our veterans, and our entire economy are caught in the crossfire. In screwed news, property losses from the deadly flooding in Colorado may top $2 billion. According to the catastrophe modeling firm Equicat, half of the losses were homes, and the other half were businesses and government property. At least 1,700 homes were destroyed, another 1,600 damaged, and hundreds of miles of roads and bridges have been completely wiped out. And most of the property was not covered by flood insurance. State and county officials have not begun to make actual damage assessments, but they believe that Equicat's estimate is a fair starting point. Carol Walker of the Rocky Mountain Insurance Information Association said, "This is a good first snapshot of the extent of the damage based on the number of buildings damaged and destroyed that we're seeing." The historic flooding may be the most destructive natural disaster in Colorado's history based on the large area of destruction and the severity of property damage. The federal government has pledged $30 million in flood relief, but that won't go far to cover the extensive damage. Americans from all around our nation are demanding that we come together and do more to help the people of Colorado. In the best of the rest of the news, in just over 2 years, the cost of solar power in the United States has dropped by more than half. According to a new report from the U.S. Solar Energy Industries Association, solar panel prices are 60% lower than they were in 2011, and the industry is growing fast. Quarter ended in June 2013 was the second highest for solar growth in our nation's history. The rapid rate of new installations means that our country will pass the 10 gigawatt mark sometime in the next few months. And the panels that are already installed have enough capacity to power a city as large as Philadelphia or Phoenix. All in all, the SEIA report shows that solar power is on its way to becoming a major energy source in the U.S. Manufacturing and technological advances have lowered the cost of solar power, and tax credits and subsidies are putting new panels within the reach of millions of Americans. The SEIA report says that as solar panel costs drop, the solar power industry will grow even faster and provide even more low-cost renewable energy to our nation. This is great news for our environment and for millions of Americans who will soon see lower energy bills. Taking food out of the mouths of hungry people, taking money out of the budgets of poor people in order and holding the entire government of the United States hostage to try to prevent Obamacare from going into effect over the next 4 months or 6 months, 5 months, whatever it is. You want a death panel? It's called the Republican Caucus in the U.S. House of Representatives. We understand perhaps a little bit more because of the Taliban. Insurgency is the way they went about systematically understanding how to disrupt and change a person's entire process. We need to understand that insurgency may be required when dealing with the other side, the Democrats. If the Democrats don't give us these options and opportunities, then we will become the insurgency. I think insurgency is a mindset and an attitude that we're going to have to search for and find ways to get our message out. Kevin McCarthy, who was at that meeting, went even farther. He said, we've got to challenge them on every single bill, show united and unyielding opposition to the president's economic policies. These are the same guys who had no problem saying yes to Bush-Cheney on the stimulus, on Bear Stearns, on AIG, on TARP 1 in September of 2008, on TARP 2 in October. Of course, that was all under a Republican president. 2 wars. But feeding hungry children? No, we can't do that. Mark Taylor-Canfield in Seattle, Washington. Hey, Mark, you got a GMO labeling battle in your state, in Washington State?
Yes, we do, Tom. It's a huge story. First, I want to give a shout-out to all the folks in New York City that celebrated the 2nd anniversary of the Occupy Wall Street movement. So
indeed,
kudos to everybody for keeping those issues going. But, yeah, the breaking story is that there's a group called Moms Against Labeling, which supports the Initiative 522 campaign in Washington State to label GMOs. And they have taken the No on 522 campaign to court, claiming that there's a violation of Washington State's public disclosure laws because they've failed to release the information about some of their donors, including allegedly the Grocery Manufacturers Association, which, of course, put millions and millions of dollars into California to fight that GMO.
Okay, so let me back up a little bit here for people who may not know what you're talking about in the state of Washington. You have a ballot initiative in the state which requires that genetically modified foods be labeled, correct? And it's ballot initiative 522?
Yes.
Okay, that's number one. And then number two, there's a group called No on 522 that has apparently been funded by many probably out-of-state interests as well as in-state interests. And they're saying, vote no on this thing. We don't need no stinking labeling. And they're being sued because they're not divulging who's giving them their money, right?
Yes, it's yeson522.com is the website that has the information about what's going on in Washington State.
Cool.
Actually, Dr. Vandana Shiva was here last week at a major gathering at Town Hall, so I got to interview her for Free Speech Radio News. And she's saying that Initiative 522 in Seattle, or in Washington State actually, it's a statewide ballot measure that's coming up in November. She said that it has precedent-setting potential for the rest of the planet, and that it's a very, very important issue. She's saying that in order for people to even be educated about what they're eating and the health effects of what they're eating, first they have to be able to know what they're eating. So it's a basic consumer's right.
Yep, absolutely. Very well said. Mark, thanks a lot for the heads up on that. Hey, I want to know your take. So if you have a comment or question for our radio or TV show, grab your phone or turn on your computer, point the camera at your own face, hit record, and send your videos to yourtakemytake@gmail.com. Don't want to be seen on TV? Then leave a voice message on our rant line at 202-536-5306 and tune into the big picture every Thursday night for our Your Take, My Take live segment. These guys are talking about bringing the government of the United States to its knees. They're not delusional. It may be a different kind of mental illness. It might not be in the DSM, but it's a mental illness. And it's a mental illness that has as its consequence the death of human beings in the United States of America. It's the killer Congress. It's not the do-nothing Congress. It's the killer Congress. And somebody needs to say it out loud. 15 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So, you think I've gone a step too far? I don't think so. I think I've just gotten started. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And there's no way that the Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives are going to do anything that will help average working people and average homeowners. If there was a way, if it was important to do this to help the banksters, the billionaire class, the people who fund the Republican Party in the House of Representatives, yeah, there's a possibility that, you there in Boise, Roberta, and everybody everywhere, make sure that every friend you know is registered to vote and is well informed about the issues, because the election coming up in another 14, 15 months, the election in November 2014, is going to be one of the most important elections in our lifetime. And it's going to be a midterm election. These are elections that people typically don't show up for and don't pay attention to, which is why typically Republicans do well in those elections. Defending America from the weapons of mass deception. Thom Hartmann here with you. Welcome back. One of the Democratic members of Congress pointed out that one of her Republican colleagues, and my apologies, I just read the story once yesterday, so I don't remember the names of these people, but one of her Republican colleagues had gone on a junket of some kind to some resort that was paid for by a big corporation, and in 6 days he had eaten food that was worth more money than food and drinks, that was worth more money than an entire year's worth of food stamps. So, I mean, that's where that's going. Point. The Republicans have no problem with business people writing off 3, 4, 5, 6 martini lunches, but money for poor people? No, can't have that. Can't have that. Even if they're the working poor, even if they're working 2 jobs, 3 jobs, 4 jobs, it doesn't matter. If they're not rich, they're not contributing to the Republican Party candidates, then to hell with them. Michael in Brookline, Massachusetts. Hey, Michael.
Hi. I have 2 points. Let me make the first one. Bernie was on earlier, and he talked about how people and I agree with this, how to outsource workers and basically pay shit wages to people.
Excuse me. I think that our guest said a word that you can't say on the radio, and if that's the case, my apologies to our listeners. But made it through to television, my apologies. Once again, Pope Francis amazed the world with his modern stance on social issues. In an interview with an Italian news outlet, the Pope said that the Catholic Church has become too obsessed with issues like birth control, gay marriage, and abortion. Pope Francis said, quote, "We have to find a new balance. Otherwise, even the moral edifice of the Church is likely to fall like a house of cards, losing the freshness and fragrance of the gospel," end quote. A moment later, he added, quote, "The proclamation of the saving love of God comes before moral and religious imperatives. Today, it seems the opposite order is prevailing," end quote. Pope Francis has repeatedly shocked the world and many church leaders with his views on homosexuality, his strong stance against austerity, his welcoming of Muslims, women, and even atheists. Since ascending to the papacy in March, Pope Francis has been leading the church with a focus on love, faith, and serving those in need. Pope's actions have inspired millions around the world and led to some of the largest masses in Rome in recent history. Pope Francis is changing the Catholic Church and quite possibly changing our entire world, and he's changing it for the better. And finally, last week, a Brazilian hacker wanted to express outrage over U.S. government spying. However, the hacker may have gotten a bit confused about which U.S. agency is responsible. Rather than taking on the National Security Agency, the hacker took down 14 separate websites belonging to NASA. Apparently, there was an extra A in the hacker's program that led to the takedown of the websites run by the space agency's Ames Research Center, which redirected all the sites to an incoherent message about spying. The hacker wrote, "NASA hacked. Stop spying on us. The Brazilian population do not support your attitude. The Illuminati are now visibly acting." Government agency acronyms can be confusing. We can't help but wonder whether the TSA sites will be taken down next. And that's the way it is today, Friday, September 20th, 2013. I'm Thom Hartmann on the news.